All right, let's just dive right into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack something that, honestly, usually makes a modern audience pretty uncomfortable. We're taking a journey way back in time to try and understand the incredibly jarring 3,500-year-old laws of the ancient Near East. Specifically, we're zooming in on the social and civil laws of the ancient Israelites and discovering how these really old, really intense historical texts actually helped shape the human pursuit of justice.
Just listen to this. Anyone who strikes a man and kills him shall surely be put to death. Burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. Wow. Okay, hearing these intense 15th century BC laws read out loud today, it's absolute culture shock. It sounds completely brutal, right? When we read texts like the Book of Exodus, it's so easy to view them through the lens of our modern sensibilities and just completely recoil. But to really grasp what's going on here, we have to travel back and look at the world exactly as it was.
So what are we actually looking at here? We're talking about what scholars call the civil social Torah. Basically, this was the framework designed to structure societal conduct and provide for the proper administration of justice in ancient Israel. And look, these laws, they weren't cooked up in some sterile vacuum or a comfy philosophy classroom. Not at all. They were highly practical, rigorous systems developed for a real, living community that was just trying to survive in a seriously harsh and unforgiving ancient world.
Because remember, Israel wasn't living in a bubble. They had neighbors. Take a couple of centuries prior, right around the 18th and 17th centuries BC, when King Hammurabi of Babylon established his incredibly famous legal code. When you stack Hammurabi's code right next to the Mosaic Torah from the 15th century BC, you see some striking similarities. Both of these legal codes operate heavily on a measure-for-measure principle. You know, that famous eye for an eye concept of matched punishments.
But here's where things get really interesting, where they start to split. Both of these ancient texts show crystal clear social stratification and gender differences. However, Hammurabi's system essentially scales justice based entirely on your social class. Like, if a citizen blinds a member of the aristocracy, the punishment is severe. But if that exact same citizen blinds a commoner, they just pay a fine of silver. The Torah, while definitely still a product of its time regarding property and slaves, begins to introduce these subtle but massive adjustments, specifically regarding the welfare and protection of human life across all those classes.
Now, what's truly striking here is just how stark the reality of the ancient Near East really was. Despite their differences, both of these frameworks deal with basic, fundamental crimes in the exact same way. Whether it's kidnapping or literally striking your parents, these early societies viewed these acts as ultimate betrayals of the community's sheer survival. And because of that, both frameworks met these crimes with the ultimate, most severe punishment possible, the death penalty. To wrap our heads around this, I need you to completely erase your 9th grade civics class from your memory. Seriously, just forget it. Today in the 21st century West, we live in these massive urban industrial democracies where the people rule, and we rely on this extensive, complicated prison system. Well, 15th century BC Israel was the exact opposite. It was a rural, agrarian theocracy. God was viewed as the ultimate ruler. There were no long-term prisons. Justice was a matter of immediate fines, restitution, or immediate physical punishment.
And since they literally didn't have prisons, they came up with a really specific alternative, the city of refuge. Picture this. You're in a deeply tribal society, and someone accidentally kills another person. Unpremeditated manslaughter. Historically, the victim's family would immediately send out an avenger of blood to exact vengeance. The city of refuge was this officially designated safe haven where that person could flee to be protected from execution. It was this ancient, highly practical mechanism designed specifically to stop the endless, bloody cycle of family feuds.
Now, we also have to look objectively at the historical reality of gender roles in this era. The whole survival reality of the ancient world was built around this extended agrarian family structure known as the Beit Ab. And in this context, women did not live independently, period. And that wasn't just some cultural preference, it was an economic absolute. Without the legal and financial protection of a father, a brother, or a husband, an ancient woman literally faced starvation. So the strict patriarchal laws of the time were actually tightly bound to this pretty grim survival mechanism. Okay, so we arrive at the really tough part. Let's just lean into the discomfort here for a second. Even with all that historical context, we are still looking at ancient laws that straight up endorse things like widespread capital punishment and the institution of slavery. So the big question we have to ask as modern readers is, how do we possibly reconcile our modern values with these deeply jarring ancient realities? How do we make sense of this today without just tossing the whole thing out? Well, the crucial point might be found in a framework proposed by a scholar named William Webb called the Redemptive Movement Hermeneutic. Now, do not let that clunky academic name scare you off. The core idea here is incredibly simple, but profound. The ancient laws we read in the Torah are not static, all-time reflections of perfect justice. Instead, they are part of a moving process. They were essentially a stepping stone, designed to pull a really harsh ancient culture forward.
Imagine mapping this out historically on a timeline. Point X represents the extremely harsh baseline of human behavior in the ancient Near East during the 2nd millennium BC. Then you have point Y, which is the biblical text itself. It's frozen in time, speaking directly to the people of the 15th century BC, meaning it still has to contain harsh elements of that era. But, and this is the key, the laws at point Y are actively pushing the culture forward, aiming toward point Z, the ultimate perfect ethical ideal of human justice and peace.
This whole concept brilliantly illustrates how we can handle a devastating issue like ancient slavery. When we apply Webb's framework, we see that, yeah, slavery still existed in the Torah at point Y. It was deeply, deeply embedded in the ancient economic system. However, the Torah was the only ancient Near Eastern code that legally obligated masters to care for a slave's welfare, and mandated that when slaves were released, they had to be generously provisioned with resources. It wasn't the ultimate ideal of freedom at point Z, not yet, but it was a massive, unprecedented leap away from the absolute cruelty of point X.
And we see this exact same push toward welfare and economics too. Back in the ancient world, crippling debt meant you and your family were sold into perpetual slavery. To stop this, the Torah introduced a totally radical new law. Israelites were forbidden from charging each other interest on loans. Now, they could charge interest to traveling foreign merchants passing through their trade routes, but that functioned more like an ancient form of commercial insurance. It's actually a mind-blowing economic pivot when you think about it. For the local community, banning interest was a direct mechanism to prevent human beings from being permanently financially enslaved to one another.
So as we analyze these texts, we can actually extract some pretty amazing universal principles that are still foundational today, like the establishment of balanced justice, or the absolute requirement of multiple agreeing witnesses before handing down a severe punishment, which ensured the legal system couldn't just be easily perverted to favor the rich or crush the poor. We see an institutionalized mandate to care for the disadvantaged, and strict limits on physical punishment to preserve basic human dignity.
And speaking of the disadvantaged, this is a core paradigm of ancient social care. These texts repeatedly hammer home strict commands to protect the most vulnerable trio in ancient society: widows, orphans, and the aliens, meaning foreigners. Why the specific focus on foreigners? Well, the text explicitly tells the Israelites they are required to protect the aliens in their land because they must always remember what it was like to be oppressed aliens themselves back in Egypt. Empathy was literally legislated.
All right, which brings us back to probably the single most misunderstood concept in ancient law, lex talionis, or an eye for an eye. We hear that phrase today and immediately think of brutal, unchecked vengeance, right? But in its original context, it was exactly the opposite. Human nature dictates that if someone hits you, you want to strike back twice as hard. An eye for an eye was actually a strict legal limitation. It was designed to stop excessive vengeance and those escalating blood feuds we talked about, by legally mandating that the punishment must exactly match and absolutely never exceed the crime. It was a mechanism for balance.
Which leaves us with this final big picture thought. If we recognize that these jarring ancient laws weren't meant to be a final destination, but rather a vital stepping stone pulling humanity out of a brutal baseline and toward a higher ideal of justice, how does that change the way we judge history today? Understanding the original cultural context transforms these texts from mere ancient relics into a totally fascinating roadmap of human progress. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this sparked your curiosity to keep exploring the history behind the world we live in today.